It's hard to argue against the statement that 1993 was a great year for beat'em ups. It wasn't rare to arrive at any arcade place or even at your local pizza place and find one or two killer games lying around waiting for you to insert a coin and have fun. Sure, this is talking from a consumer standpoint. If you were a developer, chances were you were horrified by the sheer number of beat'em ups the last couple of years had to offer. Number and quality, I must add. To stand a chance in a market that was getting more and more crowded by the day, developers would need to be creative to stand a chance in the future, and as you are about to see, they did. But before all that, hi, I am Savino, and welcome to the Flying Kick channel. 1994 was a peculiar year for beat'em ups. At the arcades, things were starting to slow down with only a handful of games being released, and while they were mostly great games, it was noticeable that the market was starting to shift. Even Konami, which has been extremely prolific till 1993, simply stopped releasing beat'em ups for the arcades. At home, things were a little better, with more and more games being ported or created every month, but little that we know that 1994 would be the last best year for the genre in almost 30 years. The first game of the year was, unfortunately, a game that we here in the West would never be able to play if it wasn't for emulation. Denjinmakai was released 30 years ago on February 1st, 1994, developed by Winkysoft and published by Banpresto. Winkysoft was a small company that mostly worked under Banpresto's wings and operated from 1993 to 2015, when it closed its doors after some lackluster releases. They had a big catalog, although most games were exclusive to Japan, and their most famous series was Super Robot Wars, a tactical RPG with robots or something. Winkysoft worked on 3 beat'em ups: Denjinmakai, Ghost Chaser Tensei, a port of Denjinmakai to the Super Famicom, and finally Guardians, also known as Denjinmakai 2. All these games were never ported to the West, remaining a Japanese exclusive up to this very day. If there's a list of games that are almost impossible to find information about, I would like to add Denjinmakai among the first ones. Not only is this game a Japan exclusive, which makes everything harder to research, but it wasn't exactly as successful as other games at the time. The game sold well enough to grant a sequel, but not enough to become a household name. Unfortunately, this game was very poorly preserved throughout the years. To give you an idea, this was the only image I could find from the cabinet after looking for a while, and while I was writing this, I started to notice some details that led me to believe this is not an original cabinet. There is also a huge lack of coverage from the press. While it was common for magazines at the time to skip covering arcade games that weren't from a known IP, you could always find a mention here and there, and in the case of Denjinmakai, almost nothing can be found. It's a pity. Usually these games have an interesting story behind their production, but here, no matter how much I looked, I came back empty-handed. I could find some information about the Super Famicom version, but just small snippets like this one on EGM and this one from the French magazine Joypad. It's a shame to think that, despite having many fans around the world, it is likely that the story behind this game is forever lost to the sands of time. Fortunately, the game's story is finally available for those who do not speak Japanese, thanks to a fan translation. But before that, I would like to talk a little bit about emulation. As I said before, it is thanks to emulation that this part of the beat'em up history can be known by a broader audience. Not only this game was available only in Japan, with just small articles about the Super Famicom port, but it was never released to anything else. If it wasn't for emulation, this game would probably be forgotten by now, except for a few lucky Japanese players who happen to remember it. And it is also thanks to emulation that we Western players are now able to understand the story. I don't know the technicalities of translating a ROM, but even if it is possible to inject the translation into the original cartridge, How many people would be able to do it? It is thanks to the effort of the fans alone that a game like this can be now fully appreciated by all players around the world. Emulation is about this: preservation and democratization. But let's talk about the game's story. In the year 2079, the world is no longer controlled by humans, but by a supercomputer that oversees all aspects of human society. But in this world, somehow, it worked. It worked so well that for a time crime completely halted and society lived in peace. But after some time, criminals managed to infiltrate the cities and commit crimes completely invisible to the computer. They were known as ghosts. To fight against them, a special police force was created and they were called Ghost Chasers. Honestly, not a bad story at all. It is cool to see sci-fi beaten ups trying to escape the trope of girlfriends being taken hostage. Okay, let's be fair, in 1994 the kidnapped girlfriend trope was already scarcely used by games, but the joke stays. And they don't score a point in the beaten up bingo. During the game, you will be tasked to hunt down different criminals, each one in a different part of the city, with a brief and a debriefing after each one of the 8 levels. They are all in Japanese in the arcade version, and since the SNES version is missing a level, you will be missing something here no matter what. But to be completely honest, while it's cool to learn more about your next mission, there is nothing in those briefings that is vital to your enjoyment. Graphically, Denjinmakai does not disappoint. The game has some beautiful backgrounds and huge sprites. Actually, this game has some of the biggest sprites you will find in a beaten up, rivaling only Violent Storm in size. Although in Denjinmakai the sprites look more detailed thanks to more vivid colors than what Konami chose for their game. Animations are okay, I guess. I don't know, I feel the game is a little bit more stiff than your usual arcade beaten up, or maybe I am too used to Cadillacs and dinosaurs. Plug for my last video right here, which had some amazing animations. If you compare the sprite sheets from Jack and Makai, you can see how many more frames CADs have over Denjin. This does not hurt the game in any way, but it is a little bit strange that in 1994 we had a game with inferior animations than what we got in the previous year. While the animations are nothing to write home about, the same can't be said about the backgrounds. Denjinmakai has some of the best backgrounds ever. Not only they are very well made, rich in detail and color, but they are also very varied. In the 8 levels you will have to cross, you will find a multitude of scenarios and places to visit, each one more interesting than the last. Sure, you will find places like the sewers, which aren't as inspired as the outdoors, but still, you will find things to see here like graffiti on the walls and that kind of stuff. Another thing that will catch your attention here is the enemies. There aren't too many of them here when it comes to variety, but they are a very weird bunch. Nothing like what we would see in games like Battle Circuit, but yet you will find some interesting designs here. When it comes to sound design, Denjin does a good job. Your hits have a satisfying sound, and while I'm not an expert in fighting games, it does remind me of impact sounds you would listen in this type of games. It's not as good as something you would listen from a Capcom game, but it does its job very well. Now, not everything here is, how I can say, original. While playing this game, I came across a familiar sound effect that I'm pretty sure you guys will recognize. Take a listen. Do you know where this sound is from? No? So take a listen again and I'll show you. Look, I'm not saying Winkysoft stole this voice clip from Cadillacs, maybe they liked it so much that they hired the same guy, but you can imagine my surprise when I listened to this after days of exhaustively playing Cadillacs. To not accuse anyone of anything, let's say that it was an amusing coincidence. Unfortunately, although the music in this game is great, you will hardly be able to listen to it while you play. It's hard to pinpoint what is really the problem here, if the music is really too low or if it is the emulation that is not good enough, but in any case, that's what we get. But yeah, as I said, The music is great, at least when it comes to the compositions. Their quality, not so much. I have no idea if were the samples used or the board that wasn't the best when it comes to reproducing sounds or again, faulty emulation, but the truth is that the end result is not on par with other games from the same era. Check it out and tell me in the comments what you think. Now finally let's take a look at the most important aspect of the game, combat and gameplay. Denjinmakai has a huge roster of characters to pick from, being 6 in total. While it may not sound so impressive when said like that, you must remember that at the time we didn't have many games with that many characters to pick, and they are, well, an interesting bunch. There is Makai, your all-around guy, Io, I don't know, which is your typical fast and weak character, and Belva, which is your strong and slow character in the game. There are another 3 characters that are a variation of the other 3, like Tux, a huge wrestler that wears those wooden Japanese sandals. They must be great to fight with. He is a little bit weaker and faster than Belva, but his throws and grapples can be extremely useful. There is also Kurokishi, my main, which is pretty fast and way more strong than Ayo. She is on par with Makai, but she is faster and has a longer reach. And finally Zeldia, a lizard guy that is only good for his special because he's not as fast as Kurokishi nor as strong as Tux, and his regular moves aren't that great. Here you'll be playing throughout 8 levels, but you can sort of pick your path in the game. In some moments you'll be able to choose between 2 levels, but this is not like Tower of Doom where you have to replay the game to see everything. Here, things are way simpler, changing only the order you go through. Your enemies, and I will repeat myself here, are a varied bunch. And I'm not only talking about the looks here. One interesting thing I noticed is that your enemies are more inclined to use aerial attacks than what you can see in most games. Not that they will abuse it, but they know how to take an opportunity and strike when you least expect it. Actually, the AI in this game is very interesting. Okay, it has its very dumb moments, but overall, at least during fights, they know very well how to put you on your toes. And even if it wasn't for the good AI, the sheer number of enemies on the screen will make up for it. It won't be rare moments when you will feel completely surrounded by all types of enemies landing flying kicks on your back or simply running over you as if they were bulldozers. In Denjinmakai, the number of enemies at any moment is something that you wouldn't find playing alone in any other game. Here, Winkysoft didn't hide they wanted your money, and to deal with this huge army of enemies, they granted you only 1 life per credit. Yep, this is one of those games that wanted to make the big bucks with your allowance. But let's be fair, while the game can be cheap for providing you only 1 life, at the same time, it gives you enough moves to deal with everything in your way. First, this is a 2-button game. You have an attack button and a jump. Pressing both, you guessed it, unleashes your special, and you can also run by pressing twice on the direction, and one interesting thing here is that you can block by holding the attack button. This is not that common in beat'em ups, and in this game it can protect you from almost every attack. And while it superficially looks like this is all you will get in the game, there are a lot more under the hood here. Denjinmakai borrows a lot from fighting games that were getting extremely popular in 1994. Here, you can combine your special with directional inputs and unleash a whole new set of specials. Let me pause the description of the combat here for a moment to bring a little bit of context. I said at the beginning of this video that 1994 was a peculiar year for beat'em ups, not only because the trend was winding down at the arcades, but also because it was in 1994 that beat'em ups started to implement a ton of new mechanics that, unfortunately, came to a halt thanks to the lack of popularity the genre would face in about a year. Denjinmakai was the first bringing new ways to use your special, and then we had armored warriors with bits and pieces of your enemies falling down and being usable by you, changing how your character plays, and I will not even talk about what Alien vs Predator means to beat'em ups because that game is getting its own video pretty soon. As you can see, 1994 was a year of few beat'em ups at the arcades, but the ones who graced the malls and stores around the world brought a lot of new things that would inspire a whole new generation of developers decades later. So, your specials. As I was saying, you not only have a ton of different specials to use, but you also can use them as you will. Here, you will have a special bar that refills automatically with time. If you hold still, your character will start to glow and the bar will be filled quickly. This is a pretty interesting risk-reward mechanic that encourages you to use your most powerful moves while managing your meter. And the game will force you to use your specials because more often than not your regular moves will feel a little bit weak. Despite having a ton of regular moves, the game will throw so many enemies at you that it will feel like you're not doing much. Sure, throws, back fists and moves like that are perfect to help you to control the crowd and position your enemy to then unleash your specials, but they have to be seen more as defensive moves than offensive ones. These are moves for when your special bar is depleted and you have a couple of enemies coming at you. All your characters will have the same number of moves and specials, and to unleash them the combinations of inputs are basically the same. Nothing out of the ordinary, just your basic up and down, left and right, and so on. You also have a desperation move that you can use when your life bar is red and your special is full, which is very powerful. And if you have a friend to play, you can also unleash some team moves that are way more powerful and, not to mention, fun. Denjinmakai can be a little bit hard to play if you don't know these details. The first time I played this one I had no idea what was hidden inside. It was ages ago when the emulation of this game was partially broken, there wasn't even audio yet, and I took a beat from the enemies trying to pass through them like I was playing Final Fight with a general special bar. It was only after a while and purely by chance that I noticed I had more moves than I imagined. And this can be a bit frustrating for first-time players, probably puts some people off. You see, while the game is pretty cool and innovated some of the mechanics, the fighting design is still a bit old. The characters have a short reach, their attacks lack the impact you could find in games from the previous year thanks to the flimsy and quick hit stop from your enemies. Your regular attacks aren't very satisfying already thanks to their lack of power, but when you add the poor reaction of your enemies, it makes everything very disappointing in my opinion. More often than not, you will have to be on top of your enemy to hit them, except if you're playing with Kurokishi or Io, since they have a longer reach than everyone else. Even considering that the specials are the main star of this show, making your regular combat not as good as it could be can hurt the game a little bit. And while your specials are essential to the experience, pulling them off can be a bit tricky sometimes. The controls are responsive, but you don't have a huge window of time to press the commands. Everything should be pressed with precision and quick, or you will look like a fool or, more likely, take a huge beating from your enemies. The lack of more buttons also hurt the game a little bit. Block could use its own button and have to press attack and jump plus the directional commands can be a little too much, especially if you are playing with a controller instead of a stick. You see, this is one of those games where playing with an arcade stick makes the experience a lot better. The game was thought for these controllers and pressing two buttons at the same time on it can be way more precise than on a controller. In reality, the two-button layout makes everything a little bit clumsy in my opinion. One thing that's lacking in this game is weapons to use. While you can find a few here and there, include some pretty useful guns, their numbers are kept to a minimum and you will find them very sporadically. When it comes to the bosses, they are, well, a mixed bag. While you have some interesting ones like Neptune or Shiden, you also have to face some of the playable characters. While this is not a problem in itself, it is not as interesting as it was in Brawl Brothers, where you had to unlock the character by beating some sense into their heads. Here you just face a so-called replica of one of your characters and that's it. I'm not sure if it was a lack of time or a design decision, unfortunately we may never know, but this is not exactly the most thrilling encounter you can have in a game. Denjinmakai is, in the end, a pretty unique game. The combat focus on the special is pretty cool and playing with two players and unleashed in specials is pretty awesome, but at the same time the game has some shortcomings that are not excusable in 1994. The lack of impact on your enemies, the outdated two buttons layout, the poor OST quality and its presumably low volume during the gameplay make what could have been an incredible experience something a little bit annoying and disappointing at first glance. There is a great game hidden here, and the legions of fans this game has is proof of that, but it is a game that will ask you way more time to learn its secrets than what you would expect from a beat'em up. And I'm considering games like Tower of Doom here. After getting used to it, the game can even become a little bit easy, but for that, you may want to save a bit of your allowance because you will need a few credits more. Winkysoft and Banpresto would return one last time to this franchise in 1995 with Guardians, also known as Denjinmakai 2, but this one I will save for its own video, since I believe it's a vastly superior game than this one, and one I believe is criminally overlooked. And that's it for the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed this look at this 30 years old game. I will be back pretty soon with another one since the new releases are a little scarce nowadays, but things will change soon, trust me. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling what do you think of Denjinmakai. Other than that, I hope you all have an awesome day and remember, keep it up.